Welcome back to Up Front. After a few months as an early frontrunner, Governor Walker's bid for the presidency has hit a rough patch. He's been tumbling in the polls, both in Iowa and nationally. Just how bad has it been? A Monmouth University poll late last week showed Donald Trump and Ben Carson surging, and Walker now back in the pack with just 3% support of the Republicans polled. Walker campaigned in Texas last week, then back to New Hampshire this weekend. For a national perspective on the Walker campaign, I talked with political writer Molly Ball of The Atlantic, who was in Milwaukee last week.
Let's talk about the current state of the Walker campaign. How would you describe it?
Well, I had a Scott Walker supporter, one of his top supporters described it to me as gut check time. It really is, there's a lot of angst inside his operation, because you got to remember, before he was even officially a candidate, Scott Walker got off to this incredible start in Iowa back in January. He's really the only candidate other than Donald Trump who's had a breakout moment in this campaign. He made a very strong impression, leapt out to first place, was sort of the early Iowa frontrunner, and now as Donald Trump has come to dominate the race, and thanks to the first debate in which Walker really had quite a weak performance, he's really fallen quite far and quite fast. And he's made a series of gaffes in the last couple of weeks, particularly around the immigration issue. And so there's a feeling in the campaign that he needs to regroup, he needs to reset, he needs to get back on track and go back to what he's good at.
And what does that look like? What do they think he's best at?
They feel like he's got a great story to tell. And if you go back to that first speech in Iowa, what he was doing was telling his story to a group of people who found it quite powerful, who weren't familiar with it. And he still has a deficit in terms of name identification. So there's a lot of people who don't know his story. And so they feel if he can get back to that, you know, the Super PAC backing Walker has announced that it's going to spend, I believe, $9 million in Iowa on the air starting next week.
That's a lot of television ads in Iowa.
Yeah, so they're going to be up they're going to be up on air in Iowa from now until the Iowa caucuses with ads that tell Scott Walker's story, ads that define him in a positive way, ads that tell that, again, we know from that first speech that Iowa-based caucus goers were receptive to this pitch. He just has to find a way to get it out there again and stop talking about, you know, the Great Wall of Canada or birthright citizenship or all these other things he's really gotten tripped up on.
The Donald Trump phenomenon, I don't think there probably was a single candidate in this race who anticipated this would play out the way it has played out so far. This has had a profound effect on the Walker campaign, has it not?
It really has. It really has discombobulated him, and it's taken away a lot of his support. You know, he really seemed to own Iowa until Donald Trump came along and it became clear he was just renting those supporters in the polls. And so that shows, I think, that he's in sort of the same lane as Trump, which really makes it hard for him. He's got to get those people back who are also receptive to Trump. He's not like a Jeb Bush who's really going for a different segment of the Republican Party than the one Trump appeals to. You know, most people, most Republicans I talk to don't believe Donald Trump will be the nominee, but it's really not clear what happens to get him out of the way. Are people going to lose interest in him? Will he take his ball and go home? Nobody really knows. And what we don't know is, once the sort of reality distortion field of Trump it dies down, then what does the race look like?
What are the stakes for Governor Walker in the September 16th debate? You mentioned the prior debate. It would seem like a lot is resting. If you're trying to sort of reset the campaign and reintroduce yourself to the voters, it would seem like that's going to carry a lot of weight.
I think it will. I think the expectations are on him to do better than the first time when he played it safe and sort of wanted, I think, to stay out of the line of fire, and that ended up not being a good strategy for him. So I think we'll see him trying to make a little bit more of an impression. At the same time, I would not say it is make or break, just because it's still early. No single moment is make or break at this point. But what we see about these debates is, largely because of Trump, they're getting a huge audience. So it's a real opportunity for all of the candidates to try to make an impression on voters, and a lot more voters than we would normally expect are really tuned into this.
And that is a good thing and a bad thing. If you're Scott Walker, depending on how you viewed that first debate performance, if you didn't view it as a success, not a good thing that so many people saw it.
Well, I don't think he hurt himself in any way, right? He didn't make a gaffe. He didn't say something that's really going to come back to haunt him. And something that we see in the polls is that he still has very high favorability among Republican primary voters. So a lot of people are keeping the door open to Scott Walker. But that with so many candidates in the race, you've got to do more than just remain acceptable or be people's second choice. You really got to get in there and make the sale. And one rap on Scott Walker is that he's not aggressive enough. I know people in Wisconsin will find that ironic given the fights he's been in here. But for the national primary electorate, you know, they like Trump. They want to see someone who's a fighter, who's got that fire in the belly.
So we can expect to hear more about the Wisconsin story from the governor. That would be your guess in the coming weeks?
That's my prediction.
Our editorial partner, WisPolitics.com, has a roundup of news coverage on Walker's presidential bid. You'll find it on the Walker Watch blog at WisPolitics.com. Next, Milwaukee's Common Council takes up the plan for a new downtown arena. I'll ask the council's president about the likelihood of approval. That's next on Upfront.